Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. So today, we're diving into one of the most infamous, yet strangely invisible, locations of the entire 20th century, Adolf Hitler's subterranean stronghold, the Führerbunker. We're going to peel back the layers of all those decades of rumors, Hollywood movies, and pop culture myths to demystify the actual physical reality of this space. We're looking straight at how it was built, who was actually trapped inside during those crazy final days, and exactly how it was deliberately wiped off the map. Right off the bat, I want to anchor you to this one number, 8.5. That is how many meters underground the main Führerbunker was buried beneath the Reich Chancellery garden in Berlin. That's nearly 28 feet deep. Literally, just picture being sealed inside a concrete box at that depth, completely cut off from the natural world, while the biggest war in human history is quite literally crashing down right over your head. The sheer physical isolation, that intense claustrophobia, it completely dictated the strange reality of its final occupants. For decades, this bunker has been treated as this dark, almost mythologized underworld. But today, we're stripping all that away. We're looking at the concrete facts. By digging into the engineering, the timelines, and even the post-war urban planning, we can really understand what this structure actually was, and maybe just as importantly, why it essentially no longer exists today. Section 1, the subterranean fortress. Let's get into the architectural origins. So look at the stark difference in these two construction phases. On one hand, we have the Führerbunker, or the forward bunker. This was finished back in 1936, and it was just 1.5 meters deep, sitting right beneath a large reception hall cellar. At first, it was honestly just a temporary air raid shelter. But as Allied bombing of Berlin really ramped up, a massive expansion was absolutely necessary. Enter the Führerbunker. Completed in 1944, this new section was so much deeper at that 8.5 meter mark, located to the west-southwest, and connected to the older bunker by a stairway set at right angles. The whole thing was sealed off by a heavy bulkhead and massive steel doors. Moving on to Section 2, descent into the bunker. Let's talk about the physical reality down there. 3 meters. That's nearly 10 feet. That was the thickness of the concrete roof protecting the lower level of the Führerbunker alone. Built by the Hochtief Company as part of this massive underground construction program that kicked off in 1940, the structure was designed to take an unbelievable amount of punishment. You didn't just casually walk into this place. You descended down a staircase into a highly fortified, deeply oppressive environment that was shielded by roughly 4 meters of concrete just on its sides. Now, the crucial point here is that this level of extreme fortification, it did not come cheap. The construction cost for the Führerbunker alone came out to exactly $1,349,899.29 Reichsmarks. The Reich basically poured a massive amount of capital and engineering resources into creating this impregnable, permanent shelter right under the beating heart of Berlin's government district. Inside this multi-million-marked fortress, you had about 30 small rooms. But let me tell you, it was no luxury hotel. Because the bunker was actually located below the water table, the conditions were incredibly, unpleasantly damp. I mean, groundwater pumps had to run 24/7 just to keep the complex from flooding outright. Imagine it, the constant droning noise of diesel generators providing electricity, the thick smell of damp concrete and well water being pumped in just so people could survive. And it is just wild to think about who was actually crammed into those 30 damp little rooms by April 1945. It became this bizarre, intensely claustrophobic mix of people. Hitler took up residence in the newer, lower section in January, surrounded by all this high-quality furniture they just dragged down from the chancery above. But as things deteriorated up top, he was joined by a wildly diverse crowd. We're talking Eva Braun, high-ranking military commanders, secretaries like Traudl Junge, nurses, a telephone switchboard operator, and the entire Goebbels family, including their 6 children, who were actually housed up in the older Führerbunker. It was literally an entire microcosm of a dying regime, sealed away in a concrete box. Section 3, the final collapse. Let's look at April 1945. By April 16th, the Red Army launched the Battle of Berlin. Just 4 days later, which happened to be Hitler's 56th birthday, he made his last ever trip to the surface to award medals to boy soldiers in the totally ruined Chancery Garden. That very same afternoon, Soviet artillery bombarded Berlin for the first time. For days, Hitler was in total denial, barking orders for impossible pincer attacks from units that could barely even move. But the breaking point hit on April 22nd. During an afternoon conference, he finally learned that a major counterattack by SS General Felix Steiner hadn't happened. Hitler fell into this cheerful rage, openly declared the war was lost, and announced his intention to stay in Berlin and end his life. As the Soviet forces tightened their grip, The disconnect between the bunker and the outside world became absolute. On April 28th, Martin Bormann sent a desperate wire to Admiral Donitz. He literally just wrote, "Reich Chancellery, a heap of rubble." Really think about the contrast there. The grand administrative center of the regime was completely destroyed, while its leadership sat 8.5 meters below the dirt, demanding relief from armies that were either already surrounded or in full retreat. The timeline of those final hours is just relentless. On that same day, April 28th, Hitler found out that Heinrich Himmler was secretly trying to negotiate a surrender with the Western Allies. Viewing this as the ultimate treason, Hitler ordered Himmler's arrest and actually had his liaison in the bunker shot. Shortly after midnight on the 29th, Hitler married Eva Braun in a tiny civil ceremony and then dictated his last will and testament. By the morning of April 30th, reports came in that the defenders would completely exhaust their ammunition that night. So that afternoon, around 3:30 p.m., Hitler and Eva Braun committed suicide. Their bodies were carried up the stairs to the ruined garden and burned, exactly as Hitler had instructed. Which brings us to Section 4, Aftermath and Breakout, in May of 1945. So Joseph Goebbels briefly became chancellor, but by the evening of May 1st, he and his wife had their children poisoned in the Führerbunker before taking their own lives. With the leadership completely gone, General Weidling ordered the survivors to break out. Following the paths of these frantic escape attempts, we see the first group, led by Monka, tried to pierce the Soviet rings but was quickly captured. Later that night, Martin Bormann managed to cross the Spree River, though witnesses later reported seeing his body nearby. Finally, with Soviet forces overrunning the Chancellery above, General Weidling officially surrendered his staff at 6 a.m. on May 2nd. But right in the middle of all this military surrender and death, there's this incredible, very human detail. The last man in the bunker wasn't a general. He wasn't a politician. It was Johannes Henschel, the master electromechanic. He stayed behind, completely alone in this massive underground complex, after literally everyone else had fled or died. And why? Because the field hospital, operating in the ruined Reich Chancellery above, desperately needed the bunker's generators and pumps to keep their power and water running. He stayed at his post until the Red Army walked right into the bunker at 9 a.m. on May 2nd. Section 5, Erasing the Landmark, a post-war epilogue. After the war ended, the authorities were deeply concerned that the site would become some sort of twisted shrine or monument for Nazi sympathizers. So they kicked off a decades-long campaign of erasure. Between 1945 and 1949, the Soviets completely leveled the surface ruins. In 1947, they actually tried to blow up the bunker itself, but those 3-meter-thick concrete walls were so ridiculously strong that only the separation walls took any real damage. Fast forward to 1959, the East Germans tried even more demolitions, and finally in 1988 and 89, during some extensive residential construction, crews uncovered the underground sections again. For the most part, they were just deliberately destroyed, filled in, resealed, or simply ignored. Which leads us to a pretty fascinating question. What do you think is actually left today of this massive 1.35 million Reichsmark subterranean fortress? A place where the final apocalyptic days of the Third Reich actually played out? Well, the answer is incredibly mundane, and that is entirely by design. It's just an anonymous parking lot and a single information board, one that was only put up in 2006, right before the World Cup. The urban planning strategy here was brilliant in its simplicity. Just ensure the surroundings remain completely anonymous and unremarkable. That emergency exit where the bodies were burned, it's literally under a parking spot. It leaves us with a really powerful final thought to consider. How much of the history we study is deliberately buried right under our feet, reduced from heavily fortified myth to an everyday patch of asphalt, just to ensure the world can move on? Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.
For more Cold War documentaries, technical, and history videos, watch the next upcoming video. This is Chronic.